On this episode of Stories Behind the Grind, listen to my conversation with Dr. Karen Sutherland, who currently leads the social media and public relations disciplines at the University of the Sunshine Coast and brings with her over 20 years marketing experience. We discuss how to build trust and integrity in your business to develop long-term customer relationships, how to best deal with negative feedback from online and in-person reviews, and how to build engagement with your audience. My name is Aidan Vocalo, and here you will find business strategies, tips, and tactics that you can incorporate not only in your own venture, but your life, to help you simplify and strategically grow, scaling up the impact you are having in this world. Listen as I talk to creators, innovators, and game changers on what it takes to build an impactful business, uncovering their insights, strategies, and tips to help you increase profitability and develop a thriving team culture. Welcome to the Stories Behind the Grind podcast. Karen, thanks so much for coming on the Stories Behind the Grind podcast. It's great to have you on.
Thank you for asking me. I'm very honoured.
No worries. Karen, you bring with you over 20 years marketing experience, and you've previously worked for ABC TV, Australian Red Cross Blood Service, and Thankful. You've had your work on social media published, peer-reviewed, and cited over 33 times, and you currently lead the social media and public relations disciplines at the University of the Sunshine Coast. Tell me, where did your interest in marketing develop from, and what are you currently working on?
Well, I think, it sort of stemmed from marketing and communication. So I think I've always been a communicator and a storyteller, even as a kid. And I think it was only natural for me to sort of get into that field. So I first studied communication at Monash University. That was my first degree. And then I started working at ABC TV straight after that and ended up in their marketing department for a short stint. And that's, I think, where it really it stemmed from there, my interest. And then my jobs seemed to just opportunities I was offered all sort of fell into that line of marketing, communication and public relations after that. And so right now, sort of fast forward 20 years or whatever, now I work at the University of the Sunshine Coast as a lecturer, and I've just developed with some help a social media degree, so a Bachelor of Communication Social Media. So we've just started that this year. And I also do sort of consulting and workshops and social media coaching for small business and non-profits, and writing a book at the moment as well on social media. So keep me very busy, but I really love what I do. So it's fun to me.
Yeah, it does sound like you're keeping very busy with all those aspects, but I guess centered around the core sort of pillar of marketing and how that can be best used for people going forward. You mentioned before you've done a fair bit of work with social enterprises, and I was wondering, what marketing lessons have you learnt from consulting to these enterprises that would be applicable to the small business market?
Well, I think what I've learned is generally in, say, non-profit NGOs, there aren't a lot of resources, particularly in the beginning. And so things like, say, social media and marketing often falls on one person who's doing a lot of other things too. And I think that can really hamper the success of how well things are implemented, because, one person cannot do everything. And so I think even trying to get some people who are experts in their field to do some pro bono work or just something to help lighten that load would actually help in the end to be more effective. I know some NGOs, they do seek the help of agencies and to help them with their social media. And I've seen that work and also not work. And so I think when it doesn't go so well, it's because the agency may just be focusing on things like growing an audience, but not looking at things like engagement and relationship building and actually growing an audience that is going to actually be effective for that organisation. When an agency does it well, they really get what the organisation's about, and they actually spend time within the organisation to really understand and actually tell their story in a really genuine and accurate way.
How important is being this authentic, or having that authenticity and knowing the brand story? How important is that for small business owners?
Oh, it's everything. And people like to know about other people, and they like to know why people start a business and the story behind the business. And sharing that, and particularly with small business, often the owner is the face, and they are seen as the business. And so sharing that stuff and sharing stories that resonate with people around that business and how it started and how it functions is often what gets people over the line and decide to actually engage and purchase from that business.
For those business owners, I guess, struggling to put themselves out there or to communicate their story, what would your advice be for them to sort of come out of their shell, I guess, and to be a bit more forward in communicating their value?
Well, I guess, first of all, I would just get used to telling your story to even just to people that you know and people that you see face to face. And then you can do it in front of, say, a smartphone to create a little, like a 1-minute video that can be used on social media just to give you a little glimpse of what's going on. And it gets easier. Like the more that you put yourself out there, the easier it becomes because people get to know you and people want that connection with another human being. And so it's actually a really effective and important thing to do to build relationships with both existing and prospective customers.
For sure. And I guess that's all about or leads into building engagement as well between the business and prospective and new clients. What's some advice you would have to build that engagement further?
Well, it would be just to find out what problem you can solve for your customers and or prospective customers and offer sort of content and information that's going to be of value to them and not trying to sell to them. So essentially, so things like social media and digital media and things like that, and even events and networking events and other opportunities to connect with people are there to build relationships. And so it's really important to take that focus about building relationships, not just trying to sell to people. In the last week, I've had 2 people add me on LinkedIn and then within the next message, try and sell me something. And that's just so off-putting. I don't even know really who these people are to begin with. We have no relationship. And it feels like the only reason they were interested in connecting with me in the first place was just to sell me something. And I don't think that's a genuine way to actually do it. There is much better ways to approach that. So, yeah, for me, it's just, adding value to them, giving to them, and working on the building of the relationship.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, establishing those long-term customer relationships is so important in an era where, I guess we're all experiencing people trying to get these quick wins and trying to, cold call or cold email. It sort of goes against what's really important these days. And it is about having that empathy and developing those long-term relationships with your, current and future customers or clients going forward. Because that's where, I guess, true value can be exchanged and you can sort of better understand where or the problems that your customers are having.
Absolutely, yeah. And doing some research about them. And someone else who added me on LinkedIn as well a few weeks ago, and they sent me a message and they said, "What do you do?" It's like, you haven't even read my profile, Actually working out and doing some research on the people you're trying to connect with and then seeing how, you might then see an article that you think might be of interest to them and sending it to them. It shows that, you're really actually thinking about their needs and actually putting in some effort into the relationship too.
Yeah, it may take a bit more time to do it, but I guess the payoff's so much greater.
That's right. And it may not be that, you may not end up even turning that person into a customer, but they might tell 10 other people about what you do and you could, generate customers that way.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's about having that referral connection. And even if you can't, as a business, even if you can't help that person directly, but you can help them, solve a problem, maybe even if it's unrelated to your business, they then might refer on people that you could better serve. And I guess it's all about thinking about them.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's it. It's about trying to help and trying to serve others rather than just going into it with your own best interests straight from the get-go.
Yeah, definitely about thinking about the other person first and then figure out how you can solve their problem if you can, or maybe even referring someone on that can solve their problem and just building that, connection and community around your business and what you do. Karen, these days we're sort of living in a world where there's constant input from multiple media channels all the time. What do you recommend business owners do to break through the noise?
Well, again, not trying to sell at every opportunity is always good. And just really focusing on that storytelling, because I think people want to actually connect with a story. And there's been, I teach a course at USC called Transmedia Storytelling. And in that we look at actual research about when people, their biology and how it changes when people are actually listening to a story. It's quite interesting. So we're actually trying to construct our meaning of the world through story. So if you can actually tell people what you're about and help them in a really kind of short but compelling way, I think that's really going to help connect with them and cut through all the other stuff. But you see, I mean, I know I'm sure you watch YouTube and you see those sort of pre-roll ads where, you know, like you just end up clicking on the 3 seconds or 4 seconds and getting rid of it. I think some people, they need something to sort of get people's attention in the first instance. So those first 3 seconds are really key in whatever you're doing, just to get people to actually notice you. Because if you don't, you just lose them. And yeah, and just staying away from sort of those really heavy sort of marketing and advertising above the line tactics that are really obvious. I guess it's just being genuine and telling a good story in a short way that is going to actually resonate, because people don't really care so much about, say, facts and figures. They care about feelings. There's a great book called Contagious, which is by Jonah Berger, and in it he talks about sort of social media content and things online that end up becoming viral. And from his sort of observations, it's really that stuff that really touches you, on an emotional level. And so trying to find a story, a heartfelt story that's genuine and really does that, that's the stuff that's going to cut through.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, from my experience, you don't really see too many people going the storytelling approach with all the ads, I guess, that I see on social media and whatnot. A lot of it's, directed at trying to make the sale, trying to make that quick win. But
yeah. So in our courses, a lot of our courses at USC, students work directly with real clients, and that's one of the things we have to really instill in both the students and the clients, that every opportunity that you're connecting with someone isn't an opportunity to sell to them, and so I think some people are scared they're not going to have that opportunity again, so they're just going to try and sell. Whereas if they actually took their time and built a proper relationship and actually added value and provided quality to the people they're trying to connect with, over time, they're just going to buy from you anyway, because you've built trust with them. And that's just a byproduct of that relationship building and that effort.
Yeah, trust is such an important pillar, especially between, two human beings. And it doesn't matter whether you're trying to sell them through a business or it's a regular sort of person you might meet on the street. It's having that foundation of trust as a solid layer in that relationship. Are there any other ways you like to build trust with the people that you work with?
I just like to, I tend to just make my actions match my words. That's probably the biggest one. Like I'm only saying I can do something if I can do it, and always following through. I think sometimes I've encountered in my own career, I've encountered some really big talkers. Yeah, like sometimes their actions don't actually meet their words. So I think that's really important, and that's part of having integrity, is just making sure that you actually do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah, it's so important to back up what you say, because you can say whatever you want, but it's really your actions that meet the expectation that you set with your words. And so
that's right, and that's what builds trust. Like if you actually do what you say, like that's probably the most effective way that you can build trust. And of course telling the truth. That's another biggie, but it sort of stems from that as well.
Curious, where do you draw the line from a truth perspective? Obviously, there's a difference between being 100% open, transparent, and when you're trying to sell something. Where do you draw that line between how much do you say the truth when you're trying to sell a product or service?
Well, I think all the time. I think you shouldn't have anything to hide. I think sometimes using, say, things like key messages, you generally only ever use, say, 3 key messages in a strategy, because you can't tell everyone everything, because there's just too much information. But I think you should be genuine and honest at all times, and making sure that what you're selling is legit. Like, for example, I've heard of some business owners using things like stock photos of a similar product on their websites and things and social media to represent their products. And I find that is not being very genuine and transparent, because it's not an actual photo of your actual product. So I think I think doing things like that and just being open and putting in the work to actually represent yourself in an accurate way, I think is the most important thing.
Yeah, agreed. It's important to have that sort of openness to what you're doing, and it's definitely not the right thing to steal, someone else's product and market it as your own. And
people know, like people can tell, and you might fool some people for a little while, but it won't be long before they'll find out. And it's easier to tell the truth than if found out later and your reputation will be ruined, because it can take years and years to build up a really positive and strong reputation, and it can take a sentence to rip it down again, or even just one just to ruin it. So it's just important to be open.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. You can definitely ruin, those long-term relationships that you've built up. You can ruin that with a lie pretty easily. So I agree. Yeah, it's important to tell the truth as much as possible and to be open and transparent going forward.
Yeah.
Karen, you're currently writing a book at the moment, and I'd love to get your thoughts on where you see social media heading into as we head into 2020.
Well, to be honest, it's just going to keep moving. Like, I think video is going to remain as an excellent vehicle for storytelling. This is how I sort of describe it in my book, that, while sort of the tactics and things may change, like the fundamental things of trying to connect with other people, they don't change really. I think sort of tech-wise, I think more and more sort of voice will come up, particularly in Australia. I know in the States it's quite big there. Even I led a social media study tour to Mumbai in India, and in certain pockets of places over there, even voice is coming up there, so voice assistants and things like that. So I think more focus on writing your content to suit those sort of devices will, I think, become a bit more important. In terms of the platforms themselves, I think they'll just keep trying to improve and add different features and compete with each other like they normally do. But to be really specific, it's hard to say. It'll be interesting to see how Facebook's version of cryptocurrency is going to go. But, these are things that remain to be seen.
Yeah, it is interesting listening to or reading about Facebook trying to enter in the that crypto market and what it's going to mean for for users with Facebook's big sort of network. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and I think too, because they've had a real issue with trust in the last couple of years, and so it'll be interesting to see just how whether that there is that level of trust for people to use that new feature.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what angle they take, and they definitely have been in the media with their trust issues. I wonder about sort of the conveniency of it all as well, in terms of will people trade more convenience for giving up sort of more data and letting go of their privacy.
Yeah, it will be interesting, to see, because how much more can we give up our privacy, because they sort of have it really already, but that's okay. Like I'm actually not too worried about it. I had a discussion the other day. I did a presentation for some research students at the university, and most were actually quite comfortable with Facebook having all of our data because we're not doing anything sort of untoward. So yeah, I guess it's a really personal thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I've interacted with people who don't have Facebook or Instagram or any social media platform, and I've met others who are on, as many as possible. So it really does come back down to, or in my view anyway, personal preference and down to the end consumer of what they're willing to share.
Absolutely.
And I think, even with people having private profiles, you really shouldn't be sharing anything you don't want everyone to see.
People can screenshot anything, that's the thing. I think some people think if they lock down their profile that they're safe, but it only takes one person to take a screenshot and share it. So it's just better to behave, really. Like it's just not. What is it? I read somewhere that say Microsoft's social media policy is something like be smart or something, which is about, just don't be dumb. Like don't do stupid things that are going to come back to bite you. It's pretty simple, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, don't share anything that you wouldn't want, your boss or your partner or anyone else to see. Using that as a benchmark or a yardstick to dictate what you post.
Yeah. And even like messenger chats, like I know someone who lost their job because something they thought was a private conversation was screenshotted and sent to someone else, and that really ended badly for them. So it's not like it's better to actually just have a verbal conversation. It's just stuff that can't be recorded. Once it's made digital, like it's out there. So it sounds sort of conspiracy theory sort of thing, but it is the truth. Like once you actually record something, it exists then, and it can really literally go anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. There's really no safety once it's on the internet. It's there forever in a sense. And
yeah,
can you get your thoughts? I'm part of a few Facebook business groups, and a common theme I see kind of regularly, probably on a weekly basis, is businesses that are getting tarnished, having a tarnished reputation from competitors or disgruntled customers, leaving bad negative reviews. Now, you come from a PR background. What would you suggest a business do when they're sort of attacked by a competitor or a really, really disgruntled customer who's left false negative feedback? What's the best way for a business to respond?
Yeah, it is a tough one because it can really damage a business. And I know there's been instances where whole teams of people have tried to, really damage a business by in like large groups leaving these sorts of things. And I'm pretty sure you can to raise it with Facebook, but it's up to them to decide what they do with it. It's usually good to respond, but in a really calm sort of way. If it's actually a complaint like that, but just to show that you're willing to have a conversation with the person but do it in a really reasonable way. And then another good thing too is to ask or try and ask your positive, customers to actually leave reviews, and then it sort of fixes it in a way because that other review's there, but the other sort of goes further down, and then it doesn't have as much impact if you're getting more positive. So that's really all I can suggest, because it's really hard, particularly on things like TripAdvisor. You can't really just stop that, and even on Facebook, like it can look really bad, and Google as well, and Google My Business. But that's really the only way around it. But I suggest actually just leaving some response that doesn't acknowledge what that person said, but is showing a willingness to have a conversation about it.
Yeah, definitely. As a customer or potential customer reading a negative review and where a business hasn't chosen to respond, you then really don't know if it's true or not, or whether the business is proactive in responding to negative feedback, whether it's true or not. Yeah, when you see that response, you sort of respect the business more, or at least I do anyway when I'm reading a review.
Yeah, and you don't have to agree with what they've said, and whatever you do not get angry, but be really quite neutral in what you're writing, but just show that a willingness to have a conversation. Don't admit to anything, but just show that ask that person to have a conversation offline or something like that, because it just shows that you've noticed it. Because I think what's worse is when someone leaves a complaint and then there is no response. It looks like that the business doesn't care. And even as worse, or on the same on par with that, is a business who waits too long before they respond. So you need to be on top of that. And they say sometimes with negative feedback to try and respond in the first hour of receiving it, or at least within the first 24 hours if you can't monitor it really closely.
Yeah, I'm glad you added that last little bit. I was going to ask if there was any policy that you would recommend that businesses put in place to respond to negative feedback.
Yeah, so they say, and particularly things like in sort of crisis management, they say that you should, because an issue can turn into a crisis. And so an issue is much easier to sort of deal with than a crisis. And so they say anything like negative that could turn into something bigger, it's best to respond within the first hour. And that sort of really nips it in the bud. And but sometimes it's hard if you're running a business and you're managing the social media, but try and do it within the first 24 hours before it just goes too far.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes people just want to be acknowledged as well. And
absolutely,
if you acknowledge their feedback.
Yeah, and just show that you've listened to them, and sometimes like reviews, like they can be painful, but they can also be really good, particularly if your business has dropped a ball somewhere that you've been unaware of, and it can actually, show you how to improve as well. I agree there are some people like competitors and things like that who go on there and do, behave completely unethically and leave, false negative reviews, which is, I think that's a terrible thing to do. And I hope Karma gets those people because it's so unethical. But reviews can be good if they're positive or if they do show there is an actual deficiency in some of your processes, and that can actually help you to keep improving.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. Getting that constant feedback, whether it's positive, negative, or neutral, can all be used to boost your business. And because sometimes you don't know until someone points it out. You're so
that's right
stuck in the day to day.
And particularly if it's a staff member or if you're sort of managing but you're not in on a particular day or something like that and you can't see what's going on, like sometimes you need to hear that. And it also gives you the opportunity where in the past it might have been, sometimes just a one-on-one conversation or, that person might have just gone out and told a whole bunch of people about their negative experience. Like now it's sort of a bit nerve-wracking, but now you can have the opportunity to actually work that out and have that conversation in front of an audience. And often that can actually, if you do it well, like it can actually work for you and even further strengthen relationships between your existing and prospective customers too.
Yeah, definitely. It shows sort of strength of character when you've got the ability to respond in a clear, concise, non-confrontational manner.
Yes. And like I was reading today, I forget what website it was on, they were showing how I think it was like a bar owner, how they responded and it was terrible. They like personally attacked the person who left the review and, just don't do that. It's better to like go and ring a friend and then have a bit of a rant to them about it than getting onto Facebook and responding to a review like that.
For sure. Or even just writing it out in an email, but not sending the email just to get it out on paper.
Yeah, totally.
Karen, a question I'd like to ask all guests, and I'd love to get your opinion of it, is what's your definition of the grind?
The grind? Well, to me, I see it as hard work, but for something that you really love. So I think, sometimes it can seem relentless and really, really challenging. And I know with me, like this year for me, like work-wise has been really huge. And there's been times where I've had to really dig deep and push to get some things done. But when they've actually happened, it's been all completely worth it. So I think the grind sometimes is where you have to really dig deep just to like achieve what it is you're trying to achieve.
I love hearing everyone's perspective of the word, so thank you for sharing.
That's okay.
Karen, where can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
Well, I'm on Facebook, so I'm Dr. Karen Sutherland on Facebook. I have a website, drkarensutherland.com. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, but Instagram's more like my I have an addiction to taking photos at sunrise at the beach here. So it's more that, but my stories show what I get up to day. And LinkedIn, of course. So I'm Dr. Karen Sutherland on LinkedIn. So just Google me, you'll find me.
We'll include all those links in the bio, in the show notes. So check those out. And I have to mention, you do take some beautiful photos of sunrises.
Oh, thank you. That's my favorite. That's one of my favorite things to do. So, I think, I work really hard, but you've got to have some balance in there as well for things that you love to do that are not work related. So
definitely having that balance is important. Whatever that means to those listening is you can't push all the time. Karen, look, thanks again for coming on the podcast. It's been a blast.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Stories Behind the Grind. Please share the podcast, and if you're not already subscribed, be sure to do that right now. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you could do me a quick favor and rate and review the podcast. This lets the platform know that I'm doing something right and people like the content. It'd be a huge help, and I'd be really, really grateful if you could. Until next time.